He created the sun, moon, and stars, all right? And here's where we get into our first bit of controversy. In day 4, he says that he created 2 lights, a greater light to govern the day and a lesser light to govern the night. And so the obvious question, I think, would come up. If God is all-knowing, how could he say that a lesser light was created at night? Of course, a skeptic and a non-believer will bring this up and say, is the moon a light? Of course, it's not a light. It's just dirt and rock that reflects the sun's light. So to us, it looks like a light, but it's not actually a light. Well, doesn't God know this? And here is my reply to that. If you ask yourself, what time did the sun rise? So I don't know what time the sun rose this morning, but let's say at 6:30. Let's say if you're watching the news, the meteorologist would say something like 6:30 is what time the sun rose. Well, doesn't that meteorologist realize the sun doesn't rise? The sun doesn't rise at all. In fact, the sun just stays here, and here's the earth, and it turns. And to us, it looks like the sun is rising, but the sun is actually sitting still there. It is the earth which is turning. It's called visual language, meaning it looks like the sun is rising. If there is a God, and if he is talking to Moses thousands of years ago about the creation of the world, he would blow Moses' mind if he told him every single detail about how the entire universe works. So I think he would have just said, big light, little light, let's move on. We got a lot to cover here. So I would say that God is talking in visual language, but absolutely, here's where some controversy would come up. If you would say, if God's all-knowing, how would he not know that the moon wasn't a light? I believe he's talking in visual language. So day 4, God created the sun, the moon, the stars. Day 5, he created life in the waters and in the air. So he created the birds and the fish and things that swim, things that fly. So this is the first, what we call animals and that type of living organisms. So that would be day 5. Day 6, he created the land-walking animals, so the mammals and different animals like that. And he also created male and female. So he created mankind. It says that he made them out of dust. He formed them with his hand, and then he breathed into their nostril and gave them life. So in 6 days, God created the universe. This is kind of a trick question. Most people would say God created the universe in 7 days, but technically he created it in 6. In chapter 2, you will see that on the 7th day God rested. So that's the first week of humanity that God rested. Now, here's where we get into a lot of controversy when it comes to the age of the universe. There are scientists who believe in what's called intelligent design. There are a lot of scientists that believe in what's called intelligent design. Intelligent design says something more intelligent than us created us, that something started us, designed us, something like that. In fact, there's some people that believe in theistic evolution, meaning that there is some sort of a God-type person that started it and then it evolved from there. Of course, that would go against what we just read in Genesis chapter 1 through 6. But if you take Genesis chapter 1 literally, then you would say that the entire universe was created in 6 24-hour periods, 6 days. And later on, we will get a lineage of people. It's called the begot section. This guy begot this guy who begot this guy, which means this man had this kid who had this kid who had this kid. It gives a family line. And it gives how old they were and how long they lived. If you add that up, the Bible says that the universe is around 6,500 years old. Now, if you have taken any science classes, creation classes, or anything like that, scientists believe that the universe is billions of years old. And so you have a major difference in what science says and what the Bible says. Now, where I said there are a lot of scientists who believe in what's called intelligent design, there are not a lot of scientists who believe that the world is 6,500 years old. So here's where we have one of the biggest controversies with the Bible and today's science. And so I'll give you a couple of theories of people who believe in the Bible and how they say how you would fix this disconnect between 6,500 years of what the Bible says and the billions of years of the universe that science says. The predominant theory trying to mesh these two together would be called the day-age theory. And the day-age theory says this, that on day one, it wasn't a literal 24 hours, it was billions of years. So on day one, when God said, let there be light, 2 billion, 3 billion years passed, whatever it may be. They don't really give a defined amount of days. So day two, more billions of years passed, and by the time you got to day 6, most of the universe life had already passed. And so that's what they would say, how you would bridge this gap between science and the Bible. The other theory would be called the age gap theory. And so day one, God created light, and then he didn't do anything for a billion years or billions of years. And so there's this large gap before he comes back on day 2. Day 2, he does something else. He separates the water from water, and then once again, he doesn't do anything. Very similar to the day-age theory. And once again, you're bringing it together. But I will say, here is the problem with both of those theories. All right? The problem with both of those theories is, if you remember, the world is created day 1, it's formless, and then day 2, he separates the water from water. Well, the sun, moon, and stars aren't created till day 4. And scientists would say that the earth is much younger than the stars and the sun. There are some stars that they would say isn't as old, but there are some stars that are billions of years older than the earth. Well, the Bible, according to the Bible, the earth is older than the sun, moon, and stars. And so if you believe in a day-age theory, then you're saying that the earth is billions of years older than the stars. And so now you've got a huge difference between the age of the earth and the age of the universe and the stars and things like that. I am what's called a young earther, and a young earther takes the Bible literally and says that it is actually 6,500 years old. So I have a lot of explaining to do to bring this together. And here's what a young earther would say. Here's how he would defend his position. That God created an old earth. We're fixing to get into the creation of Adam and Eve. And when God creates Adam, Adam can walk and talk. The day that he's created, and you'll see that he's naming animals and he's doing things like that, and he's walking around. So on day 1, Adam is old, he looks old enough, and he's physically able to walk and talk. And what I would say is, if I brought Adam in front of you, and if he were 1 day old, and let's say he's he looks like a 15-year-old. If I brought him in front of you and said, this guy right here is 1 day old, no one would believe me. Because we think in natural terms. How did he naturally get to be able to have this physical, this physique, being able to walk and be able to talk and things like that? I would say God created an old baby. Same thing with the universe. So science looks at things such as the Grand Canyon. How long did it take that river to whittle down the Grand Canyon? Well, it would have taken millions of years. But what if God just created the Grand Canyon? So science looks at it, how did it naturally happen? And I say that it happened supernaturally. So that's how a young earther would bring that together. The other big problem a young earther has is there are things, there are stars that are hundreds of thousands of light years away. And what a light year is the distance that light travels in a year. So if there is a star that's 100,000 light years away and you're looking at it, you can see it in the night sky. If it were to blow up right now, it would take 100,000 years for you to actually see it because you're seeing an old image. So the question is, how can you have any image of any star that's over 6,500 years old? Well, if you give me Genesis chapter 1, if you believe there is a God and that He's able to do Genesis chapter 1, then He's able to do anything. That's what I always tell people. If they want to argue the Bible, then you have to argue Genesis chapter 1. Later on, we'll read about a guy named Jonah. He falls out of a boat, and he's swallowed by a large fish in there for 3 days and then spit up on shore. That's an outrageous story. But if you believe that God can create the universe, He's able to create a fish, and He created humans, and He created what sustains humans. For Him to manipulate anything within physics at any time is not a big deal because He made the rules that we play by. So if God created the speed of light, God can manipulate the speed of light at any time. So I believe when He created the universe, He created the image already here on earth, and that's what we're looking at here. So science saying that it took that long to get here naturally, I'm saying God made it supernaturally. Take that as you may, but those are some of the theories. If you take the Bible literally, it says that the universe is 6,500 years old. If you take the day age theory and the gap theory, then you're going to come up closer to what science says, which is billions of years old.